Hello and welcome to the Value of Testing podcast. My name is Randy Rice. I will be your host, and today I have a special guest with me, Greg Pascal. Greg and I have known each other for, I'm thinking, almost 20 years or more
Yeah.
now. We go back a ways, and I consider him to be a dear friend, and not only that, but someone who is very, very knowledgeable in the field of test automation. So our episode today is all about the value of test automation. And if you followed these podcasts for very long, you know that the main thesis of what I'm trying to do here is build out ways that you can show the value of what you do. Because if we can't explain the value of what we do, then we're always on the bubble, it seems. We're having to justify what we're doing. And it's those groups that often get totally eliminated out of organizations. So I'm trying to give you the tools and the information to help prevent that. Just as one more point of introduction with Greg, he and I have worked together on projects, and one fairly recently. And so I've actually seen him in action, seen him in the trenches. He's written a book that you can get out on Amazon, Test Automation in the Real World, Practical Lessons for Automated Testing. It's out there. I'm looking at it right now on my iPhone. And so if you want to check that out, and Greg, feel free to mention any other things that you have going too. I know he's, for those of you involved in the ISTQB world, he's got this really cool learning tool, istqb.missionwares.com, that you can review terms for all of the certifications. It's really an amazing tool. I point all my students to it and everything. So, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Randy. It's great to be here with you today. It's always good to spend time with you and our quality community.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to getting your perspective on things right now. It seems like our entire profession of quality assurance and testing and all the things involved in that is really kind of going through some massive upheaval right now. I don't know if it's all perception or if it's how much of that is really happening. But one of the things I just want to start off with right now is what is, what's getting your excitement up right now about the things that you do. I don't guess it necessarily has to be with test automation specifically, but what's floating your boat these days?
Yeah. So let's talk about that when it comes to kind of what's floating my boat. Where am I at in automation? There's always something new and interesting, I'm working on, Randy. And probably one of the coolest things I'm working on right now is this tiny little chip I'm holding in my hand. This is a full computer. It's a microcontroller by the name of an ESP32. And can you believe I've deployed my automation framework to this chip?
Wow.
Um, you can basically plug this in anywhere where you can find any phone charger. It generates its own Wi-Fi connection point and everything, and I can configure automation to run right off of this. Now, why would you do that if you've got a gigantic computer, you might be asking? Well, my kind of use case is I'm digging more and more into IoT work. And I love the fact that I can deploy a small little IoT device like this right next to my IoT device and have it monitor it all day long. And oftentimes I tell folks when they're working in test automation, you are just really an eyelash away from learning how to do great monitoring as well. And so for our quality community out there, some of you might be wringing your hands wondering, oh, is AI going to take my role away? Well, I don't think it will, but I also want to encourage you, if you're in this work of test automation, that there are many other fields right next to this that are similar, that overlap with our skills in monitoring and resource, awareness and validation that it's up and running is a cousin that's not far away. And it requires a lot of the same disciplines and principles of verification that things are up and working as expected.
Yeah, I was also thinking about measurement. Measurement for a lot of people has been a challenge over the years. Basically, my admonition on that is let the tools do your measuring. Don't try to do it manually, but out of the box kind of tools. Many times they're very limited on what they can measure. So, sometimes we have to come up with creative ways to do that. So what you're doing there, I think measurement would be another one of those cool points of intersection.
Yes, that's a great point, Randy. And, it's interesting that in the QA world and automation world, one of the most common myths I have to bust right away when I work with a team is there's much more to the world than green and red and pass and fail. As a matter of fact, all the interesting things happen in between, if you really think about it. That's where we identify regression issues and other things. By the time it's red and it's failed, you probably have had warning signs coming all along. And that's really where the gold is to mine for our work and quality. So, but there's a tendency to want to go either to one extreme or the other. But I love to train my quality engineers in this idea of looking for the symptoms that are indicating a problem's coming, of course, well before it's coming. It's even different than the concept of shift left. It's, I don't know, shift ethereal or something. And so there's some kind of different way of thinking about it's coming, basically, and you can see it by symptoms along the way.
Yeah, I guess my sarcastic, cynical, or whatever saying about shift left is anytime you have to shift in a life cycle, you're probably doing something wrong. Um, because, life cycle testing should be a life cycle activity and it should be more like spread. So, I think of the old Three Stooges episodes where Mo says spread out. That seems to be more what the truth of the matter is. But one thing I just want to mention in all of this, I don't want to get lost. I don't want to forget about it. So what you have done, what I have actually seen you do over probably the last 2 years now, is you have built from the ground up an architecture, and not only built the architecture, but you have trained and mentored the people to actually work this architecture, to actually create, test in it, and brought them up from nothing. And I got to say, in my experience of going in and assessing various aspects of test organizations, that's a very rare thing. Many times they may hire automation experts, SDETs or whoever, to come in and do something. But I just want to say, I think what you've done is just phenomenal, and it's a constant thing too. Is one of the things I want to kind of emphasize here, that it wasn't just something that you built, put in place, and walked away from. My understanding is you're still working with it and still doing mentoring. And there's one other element here, and then I'll let you talk about it a little bit if you want to. Is that this automation team that you're working with? One of the challenges that we had was getting them to work with the manual testers and exchanging information between those two. And the idea in that, to know what to automate, we also have to know how it works in the first place, and really what makes a good test within that space. So how's that journey been for you? I mean, to me, it would wear me out personally.
Oh, I mean, I like it a lot, Randy. I think, we all kind of gravitate towards, what we really enjoy. I'm a big people person. As you and I have got to know one another over the decades, I have learned enormously from you and our many Denny's sittings at a STAR conference afterwards as we're catching up and whatever I can think of. We've done this more than one time. And but I'm very much a people person, so I like to take that individual, like these engineers, they were brand new to QA and had never really done that before, including automation. It's actually probably my favorite individual to work with. If you have the right ingredients, if you will, you can train them properly. It's actually almost harder to untrain people, from just my experience. But what I like to do when I have that situation is I really don't try to squeeze everybody through the same mold. I think that's a mistake that we sometimes need to have a certain number of manual engineers and automation engineers, but that doesn't mean that they all need to necessarily wear exactly the same outfit, you know? And so you have some that are analytical, some that are great at reporting, just some that have an innate nature to finding those really tough defects. I don't know what it is, but I bet you've encountered the same exact thing. And instead of fighting that and saying, abide by this, you will do this, what I like to do is give them the latitude to move in their strengths. And that means sometimes we even have a gap in a team. We may have someone that is lacking in some certain area, and maybe that's an area we try to hire for. But more often than not, I find when I look at individuals as uniquely created people, they all come with their own unique talents. I tend to find these amazing gems that are right there in them. I love to find them and then help leverage that to hone it, if you will. If it was a rough gem, we're bringing it out of the wheel and we're polishing it and helping them see that there's more there, and then teach them how to continue to polish that and make it better and better. It's just such a sweet spot in working with people. And where we tried to blend these two things you're talking about, which is the automation engineers, um, I actually prefer those people to not come from a development background because I think it's actually a practice you have to break them from. Um, Automation development and software development, while they use the same tools, are a different discipline. You will find if you bring software developers into automation work, they will tend to follow dry principles to a fault. Whereas in automation, you want it to be very clear what that test is doing, and you're not about efficiency. What you want is accuracy and reliability. That's the goal, not efficiency. That's why when you hear things like we want our test to run fast and whatever, you probably have somebody from a development mindset sewing concepts into a quality team when the goal is really you want accuracy, you don't want speed. Speed comes along as a side effect. But if it's not accurate, it doesn't really matter how fast we produce the results. We still may produce inaccurate results. So it's a difference, and I have to untrain lots of times folks that are in dev to think a little differently because the test case should stand on its own. You should be able to look at it and say, clearly, here's what this thing is doing. There's no mystery. It's not over abstract or hidden in here. I can tell by looking at this automated test case exactly what it's doing. Yeah. Anyway, all I was going to say is we blended these two disciplines together by saying we need great automation engineers, we need great manual testers, but you identified there's this gap here, right? This air gap, which is they don't always want to mesh beautifully. And my solution to that was develop a concept called T3, but it could be done in T3 just means 3 engineers, a team of 3, but it could be done in other variations. But 3 is actually a magic number. There's something special about the number 3. And when I combine 2 manual engineers and an automation engineer, training them in the T3 concepts, you have an extremely powerful group of people that, at least when I get to train them, usually within a week, they can start to have some deliverables. But at the end of a month, they usually have a full test plan, dozens of test cases written and automated by then. That's unusual to have happen in a 1-month period of time, but it's proven to be true.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I always talk about the testing triangle. They have process, people, and tools, and so many times, especially you go higher up into the food chain of management, and management wants to focus on the tools. Uh, they should be focusing a lot on the process, and probably even more so on the people. Uh, and that's one of the things that's really disturbing me right now about some of the trends I'm seeing with companies just decimating some of their teams, saying, "Well, we're going to replace them all with automation," and there's no one answering the question, "Well, who's going to do the automation?"
Mm.
Were it not for the people.
Mhm.
Uh, One thing too, I really agree with your comment there about you're doing a fundamentally different thing in automation, code wise. Um, when I teach test automation, I always have to be mindful of the fact that I'm teaching two things. Okay, I'm teaching one how to automate the widget, how to click it, how to make it happen. But I'm also trying to test what makes a good test for that widget. You know, a lot of times I see developers just being satisfied with does it click? That being so happy path that really you're not getting a whole lot out of the test. And I
Mhm.
hope I'm not painting with too broad a brush here. Um, I know probably not all developers are that way, but when your main focus is on getting the tool running and getting the scripts running, you tend to take that path of least resistance
Yeah,
sometimes.
that's good.
Uh, and it's a balancing act, right? Because if you go too far on the other side and you're doing too much negative testing, then your tests are failing too much, and you're having to you're waking up at the end of your run saying, "Oh, we got all these failures," and actually they were a good thing, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah,
A pass and a negative test is still a pass, right? And
right.
it's just looking for an exception handling or whatever, but you're right. And kind of my thoughts around happy and sad path, I don't use those terms at all. I think this is one of the areas I really like about ISTQB, is it defines great terminology around positive, negative, and boundary testing. Those three, any QA engineer should be able to almost repeat in their sleep and be able to describe to anybody. It's a great litmus test for your quality team. Put them on the spot and say, "Tell me about boundary value analysis," and see what they come up with, and see how quickly you can respond. They need to master those three in particular.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it, I'd like to hear your take on, over the years, I think there's been kind of a set of principles that I think a lot of people that work with automation kind of agree on.
Right.
I use that term kind of gently there. Uh, because when it comes to the testing world, finding something that you can get consensus around can be very challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
Just if you don't believe me, just go out to LinkedIn and post an opinion, and you'll get all kinds of divergent ideas there, which is fine. Discussion is good, but principles like you want to be able to rely to before you can automate something, you want it to be fairly reliable in its operation because you want that repeatability, that kind of thing. Have you noticed, um, or I'll just ask it like this: are the principles still the principles, the principles we've been teaching and relying on over the years? Have you seen any major shifts away from any of those?
Well, I haven't yet but I can anticipate one very likely one to come up. Um, and it's a flaw in the concepts of test automation that I see happen all the time. It's so much so that quality managers and others can be very comfortable with it, and that is automation, um, averaging, let's say results averaging, where, you should expect your automation to run 100% reliable every single solitary run. You should never need to run your test twice or 3 times and average out, did it mostly pass or mostly fail? To me, that's a symptom of a poor locator and synchronization approach. It always comes down to those 2. You have to master them. It's like the positive, negative boundary testing of manual testing. In automation, you have to be able to identify something, and you have to know how to tell the state. But there is this comfort level, so much so I would say it's more than 50% of folks using automation get comfortable with the idea of, I run it a couple times and it mostly passed, so it must be good to go. When you start to bring AI into that, which we know is coming and it is already here, um, AI, as much as it's driven by computers, is very non-Boolean. If you ask the same question, if you write a piece of code, a method that sums 2 numbers together, it should always give you the result of that sum. AI does not work like that. It may work like that with numbers, but when you give it complex things, it will return the result slightly different each time. If you use that to verify or validate functionality, um, I can say with great confidence your comfort level should be at about 30% that it's accurate. If you all you have to do is slightly question, are you sure about that? And I'm almost certain you will get a different answer the second time. I have spent enough time with these tools, hundreds and hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours now, that I can say with great confidence that I can get AI to encourage it to say just about anything I want. By the way I prime it, we call that confirmation bias. We can actually insert, let's just call it AI result bias. I can encourage AI to answer a certain way. I'm sure of it. And so if we start to use it for automation and the validation process, um, and let's say that we prime AI by saying, we've got to get this done quickly. I've got an hour. I need you to go validate these things. I would not be surprised if it came back and in most cases and said, it looks good to go. What a great day. Go have a margarita and call it ship the code. It's going to come out and probably take your desire for it to be done quickly and lean towards that. And this is a gap we're going to have to get our brains around as AI becomes a tool that we bring into the mix of things. So I hope that answers your question, Randy. I know I deviated a little bit, but it's
No,
interesting.
no, that's fine, Greg. No, that's kind of how I'm seeing it too. I see that there's two fundamental concerns around AI. One is, testing using AI, like for generative AI for, creating test cases and even test automation scripts and things like that. That's one specific set of uses. But then you have the other whole trail that, testing AI itself. To me, it reminds me a lot like if I'm testing, like airline ticket pricing,
Hmm.
where you're going to get a different result every time. There's so many complex factors that come into play,
Yeah.
so you're dealing with stuff now like metamorphic testing and things like that, which become so much less repeatable. It's almost, in fact, it's almost kind of like impossible to repeat it at that point. But it I think it's gonna be a challenge. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what emerges maybe, from the idea of AI automating AI testing. That's kind of one of the things that I'm interested in seeing how that whole thing is going to play out. Now, I'll just say personally, I have not had a whole lot of success with the self-healing scripts, and the self-healing tools or the tools that purport to do that. I don't know what your experience is in that.
I mean, I would tell you, I think self-healing automation's a gimmick. I think it's right up there with record and playback. Why would you ever want a script to self-heal itself? You might as well go ahead and create a script that generates green check marks. Uh, I don't see really any difference. So I think it's a gimmick in selling, and I can't imagine why I would ever want that as a human. How do I know that the self-healing is just not, um, forcing what I want to hear? So it's just to me another one of those trends we see come through. And I know a lot of tools talk about it. I actually felt like I was happy to see the trend kind of drop off a little bit. I know people are making a living with these tools, but seriously, if you went to a doctor, and he said, just take this pill, you don't need to come back, it's just going to heal it. Would you be content with that if your arm was bleeding and I guess I don't need to go back, and next thing you know it's gone gangrene and they've got to cut the thing off. So there's just certain things you want a human to be involved with, to reason through, does this look correct, and to be self-healing is, especially if AI is involved, way too dangerous. I wouldn't put my coat against it, and I sure wouldn't wanna get on an airplane that was using self-healing testing to test it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Greg. And, I also think that self-healing addresses only one aspect of test automation failures. That you can see failures arise out of a different logic that's been applied now that, the application used to do one thing, now it's doing something slightly different. And of course, your results are going to be different. Nothing to do with a locator changing or anything like that. One thing I wanted to get your take on too was I used to do surveys back when I was going to conferences a lot, and it was easy for me to do. I would have enough people in my tutorials, that I could probably get a statistically relevant sample
Sure.
just, out of a tutorial. But I used to survey around test automation quite a bit. And one of my favorite questions was, uh, if do how much do you actually depend on the test automation that you have in place right now? I worded it that way specifically because I was really trying to gauge how many people were really um, making good use out of test automation. Just w- were they just kind of in the shallow end of the pool? Were they in the deep end of the pool? And I don't know. I think we might suffer from this misperception that everybody else is doing it well. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I was wanting to get your take on just from the people that you interact with and the things that you've seen. Where do you think we are as an industry right now in test
I
automation?
think my personal opinion is it comes down to the methodology of how and what you're trying to derive from automation. Um, the most mature automation shop I worked for a few years ago was running about 2 million automated tests a month. And daily we would find defects with it every single solitary day. I mean, legitimate real bugs that the automation detected before the QA engineer was in the office. And when they came in, there were the results. They went and validated, and sure enough, there was a defect it found. Um, that isn't tool based. That's methodology based. Where we go wrong lots of times is we think automation is this. Um, Click on this button, enter this into this field and blah, 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 blah. But automated processing, and this is one area that AI can be very useful, can come in many different flavors, right? So I've often said that automation is good at getting you to places that then automated analysis can do a deep dive on. So it's kind of like a taxi driver. You go in and you say, "Take me down to Central Park," and from there you can do whatever you need to do. But you don't, maybe you want to go and determine how green the lawn is in Central Park, or what's the humidity level or whatever. But getting there is complex through that city of driving through New York City and getting there. The automated tools are good at getting you to a place, but where I think they excel and where the most of the gold is left in the river is, what do I do once I'm there? Now what can I do when I've landed in a certain place, let's say on an e-commerce cart? Now that I'm here, what happens if I linger for a while and I begin to do some deep analysis? You're going to find some gold right there, I can assure you. And it's almost always left behind because too many people are worried about getting to the park. They're too worried about getting there. And did that journey go well? Instead of saying, now that I'm here, what can I observe?
Yeah, a lot of people they judge the success of test automation by how fast does it run, and you've already addressed that, and also are all of our tests green and all of that, but without getting into some of the deeper stuff because now that takes time, you
Right.
know.
It's where the good it's where the good bugs are, though. It's where the good stuff. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. There was a point in time where I felt like, as a industry. In fact, I had the data to back it up that probably about 20% of organizations were actually making good use of their automation. A little bit after that, a few years later, I saw it rise up to maybe about 50%. But after that 50% mark, I've not really been able to gauge it
Hmm.
all that well. I need to figure out a way to do a survey or something, maybe online or something to get an idea. But then again, I don't know how statistically relevant that would be. I just get this feeling that people are conflating AI with test automation, and they're saying between the two of these things, we can do so much of what we do better and faster and with fewer people, and that kind of narrative going on. And one of my other missions is to keep, you know, pounding away at the human value that, people bring to this equation,
Yeah.
and we've been talking about that here, about it takes someone good to understand really, what they're automating. I think we still suffer from management that believes we have this magic automation wand. You know what I
I
mean?
agree. Don't you find, Randy, that the tool, there are a few tools that can't pull this off. The tool is never the problem. The approach is where I don't want to say the magic happens. It's where the value actually comes. You're not going to find you can do really anything better in Cypress or Playwright that you can't do in Selenium or other automated tools. Even this little tool is extremely powerful, and I'm not using any of those things. It's because I apply the methodology to sound testing and sound automation to it. A tool is just a tool. It's just a hammer. It's just a wrench. Um, and you know what? Tools are marketed. So how many times I must have 8 hammers in my toolbox. Some of them are framing hammers, some of those finishing hammers. I've even got one called a dead blow. Who would have ever guessed there's such a thing? But at the end of the day, they still are a weighted instrument at the end of a stick, and I hit a thing with it, and it drives it in. And automated tools are similar. They click things, they traverse things, but if they can't detect state and they can't accurately identify a thing, then you don't need to look any further. That's part of the problem with this self-healing concept, is now you're putting something else in the control of what am I trying to find on this page that I thought I once could identify. Now you're giving it the freedom to go determine what correct looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, I just recall all of those times where, as a test automation person, and I go back to the late '80s in this, and used to work tech support for one of the automated tool vendors back during the old mainframe tool days, and those are my favorite days because it's so much less to deal with. But anyway, I've been in the trenches even fairly recently, within the past 5 years of doing automation, and how many times have I spent like 8 hours trying to get this tool to engage with an object,
Mhm.
and as it turns out, it was about things that people had done in the application that were really funky and bizarre,
Mhm.
and that they had created objects that were virtually unexercisable. And my favorite of all was when I had this whole suite uh, of scripts to test the web version. I was testing the Android app, the iOS app, and then the web
Mhm.
version, and they decided all of a sudden to throw up a CAPTCHA for the website. And so that was when this is one of my favorite automation stories. So I started finding out, well, how do I get past the CAPTCHA? So I had to engage with the security test team,
Mm.
and the security test team, when they found out that all of our automation was running against that, and that we were actually kind of running outside the network, they did not like that at all. And they actually wound up flushing over $1 million of investment in test automation down the drain.
Yeah.
And, I just say that story because there's things that happen around test automation that really does influence its success or failure so many times. And it's not necessarily all the time money that people are bringing to the table for tools or stuff.
Yeah, I would say in that case, fear crept in from the security team probably, and they were probably afraid of what you were going to find, and so plugged it. Um, you know, yeah, again, kind of. I was thinking of the time I spent with our team today. I was very blessed to spend time with my team in Rwanda today. I get to do this early in the morning, and it's one of my greatest joys. We were talking about the value of humans. We're talking about philosophy a little bit. What an ironic thing to talk to quality testers about. But
Mhm.
if there was ever a time to have those discussions as AI is coming in, now's the time to have it. because what is it uniquely that a human brings? Like, what value does a human bring to something versus a machine? And our ability to reason, a computer doesn't have this amazing mind that we've been each created and given. And while it can simulate aspects of that, it doesn't have that reasoning. It doesn't have um, that intuition and that gut feeling. You've worked, Randy, with great quality engineers that almost can sniff a bug out as soon as they enter the room. There's something to be said about those that are really gifted in this work. They just have an innate sixth sense almost to them to finding great defects. And I'm afraid we're going to lose that. And we may, what we've called hallucinations might wind up just being a bunch of bugs that don't exist as well. Potentially, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think AI will introduce hallucinations of things that are working and things that aren't working, because we know it does it already. It's like working with a, I hate to say, sometimes it's like working with a child that's got ADHD and is a big liar at the same time. Um, and so there, it really can be hard to kind of to herd it in sometimes.
That is a great analogy. I a child that's a AHD and a great liar at this. Um, I have a big concern kind of in that space. I posted a comment, on LinkedIn yesterday, I think, or day before, about one of my big concerns is that more and more creators are starting to lean into AI. Okay. And I get it. Sometimes you need ideas for an outline. Sometimes, you need help putting an image together or something like that. I have a friend who is, creating all this beautiful music, with AI. And in fact, I even put one of my little poems that I had written a long time ago out to AI, and it came back with this beautiful song. But at the same time, I realized it's beautiful, but no one wrote it. I mean, a soul didn't write it. And my concern is that I'm afraid that as creators, we're going to forget how to do things. We're going to become less better writers, less better musicians, less better just creators in general,
Mhm.
because we started leaning so much on AI to do some of the heavy lifting. I mean, heaven forbid if you're a graphic artist right now.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief, so many people are just using AI to do graphic art, that kind of thing. That concerns me a lot.
That's a really interesting perspective. And by the way, I'm with you in that. I'm leveraging AI every single day now. I have turned to it more with the coding work that I'm doing. I love the architecture sessions I usually use my AI tools with, to derive things. I'm finding I'm writing less code, but I'm very prescriptive on the code that I want written for a specific area. So um, I'm not necessarily turning it loose and saying, write this whole thing. But like this morning, I needed a search capability in a tool, and so I provided some visuals, some examples of what I liked and whatever, and allowed it to build that piece of functionality out. And it did a pretty decent job. We had to go through about 4 or 5 iterations, but we got it knocked out. But before, I would have written that all 100% by scratch, and it would have taken me longer to do it. So I'm with you in that. I don't have a great answer yet, but I realize if I get so dependent on it, I may lose some of that skill. Now I've been coding forever. I've been coding, since I was 13 years old. So that's a pretty long time by now standards. But um, I wonder what that's going to be like. Don't you think a little bit? I love to teach in analogies, and I think about the 49ers going out to California, and the ones that got fooled by the iron pyrite that looked like gold to begin with. Um, Iron pyrite is not the same as gold, even though they can look very similar. And the gold that you and I generate, this is what I shared with my team this morning. The thing that is the gold that's precious that you generate are the unique human aspects of things that you make. Um, but there's a synthetic version of that that's kind of knocking at your door right now, and that's AI. And we actually did an experiment this morning. We did a little class on it, um, and what was resulting from AI was convincingly beautiful, like the song you talked about. And it was so much so, it actually was in the tone of each engineer. So we all came to the conclusion, if anybody doesn't believe this, your AI is, watching everything, right? It's learning about you. You should know that by now. And so it's going to sound like you. But everybody recognized it spoke in first person as if they wrote it when they didn't. It wrote it. And that is concerning. At some point, when something begins to impersonate Randy Rice or Greg Pascal, and it's so convincing people would know the difference. I'm worried about that reality. Yeah.
That's another one of my big concerns too. You know, I was thinking about I need to sit down and make a list of my concerns. Maybe I'll just have AI do that.
Uh,
Tell me, Chat GPT, what are my concerns about you? What concerns should I have about you? Oh, mercy. One other thing I just want to talk about for a second, and that is been my observation over the years that our profession of IT, software, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to just limit it to testers because it's much, much larger than that. But we're very trendy. Okay. And I'm not saying AI is a trend or a fad, but like, I think maybe in the tool space and in the methodology space, like Agile and things like that, how we do things can sometimes become very trendy. I ran across a quote from, of all people, C.S. Lewis.
oh,
I meet with a group of guys every Tuesday morning, and we met this morning, and this was in one of the books that we're reading. And he wrote about, I don't know which book he wrote this in, but he wrote about something called chronological snobbery. And he describes it as the uncritical acceptance of the intellectual climate common to our own age and the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that account discredited.
Yeah.
And so he encourages people to ask questions like, why did this idea go out of date? And was it ever refuted, or did it simply become unfashionable? And if so, who refuted it? How? Why? Interesting questions. And I would encourage people who are watching this episode to think about that when you start seeing things come along, trends in testing or test automation, where this tool is no good anymore because XYZ, or this approach is no good anymore because of this. I tell you, Greg, I'm camping, and I will die on the hill that the fundamentals are still the fundamentals. What makes a good test in traditionally is the same thing that makes a good test in AI or whatever. But to know if it's a good test or not, we have to understand what that is.
Yeah.
We have to understand the fundamentals. So that's just something I kind of wanted to get out there. I thought it was kind of an interesting thought. Let me see. I might have a reference on that here too. I noticed that there's a footnote. Oh, it's in his book, Surprised by Joy. That's a good book. By the way, that's an excellent book. It's a Christian book, just so you'll know if you're not a believer. That it is that, but it's one of my favorite books that he wrote.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great wisdom there for sure. Wisdom is going to be an important part of going forward. When I think, when if someone becomes addicted to something, my guess is initially you haven't recognized the danger of it yet. This is probably what leads people to get substance abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever it might be. It could be anything. And then after a while, it begins to have some detrimental effect on you, whether it begins to affect your body or whatever. our society right now is, if maybe it's always been like this. It seems fixated on fast, faster, and fastest. Uh, and there's a time when I need certain things like that. I drive a car. I don't walk everywhere. That's a huge advantage to me, and it's come with new responsibilities. AI has given me some advantages. Um, it could also turn into my therapist, right? At that point, it hasn't become good. All right. I've had this discussion with people. They're like, "Is it just me, or does anybody else talk with their AI tool regularly?" I bet you if we could poll everybody right now, Randy, talk about an interesting poll, I wouldn't be surprised that half these listeners have gone to these tools just for advice. Um, and so, is there validity to that? Maybe. Is it, if that's the only person now I go to for wisdom and words, is that a problem? We probably would find that would be a problem. We can already anticipate that. If I decide I need this pain medication because I'm recovering from a back issue, is that good for the moment? Yes, but if I become addicted to that pain medication, it's evolved into something that's no longer good for me, and I've become addicted to it possibly. AI, we would be foolish to not think that this is in itself its own form of substance, and that can be abused just like anything. At the abuse of meaningful relationships in people's lives, in devaluing the incredible capabilities we are created as humans with. Randy, you and I are both quality engineers. We have been for a long time, and yet we're very different in lots of things. And that's what makes our relationship special and have value, and why we can sharpen one another and grow from one another. Um, we don't want everybody to be the same exact thing. We want that variety. That's what makes us rich. So, again, it's funny. I started in this philosophical context with my team members this morning, and here we're back at it a little bit again. But I think it's because it starts to touch into some of these things. That when do we want a tool to begin to take on the place of a human? Uh, I, I want some of its efficiencies. I just don't want it to replace you, Randy, or Mark, or any of my other buddies that I am blessed to have in my life.
Yeah, so true, so true. I'd like to riff on that for just a second. This idea, of addiction. People can get addicted to speed. I'm not talking about the drug speed. I'm just talking about the moving quickly
Mhm.
kind of speed, and you see it in all kinds of ways. I mentioned the agile uh, life cycle approach. That was all, primarily driven by speed of getting things out faster. Then we have DevOps, that even increased it more, kind of scooted QA out of the picture. I have an analogy there. It's like, I call it the McDonald's analogy. If you go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or wherever you want to go, uh, you go there probably for one key reason, and that's because it's fast. Um, uh, I hardly ever go to McDonald's, just as a side point, but when I do, it's like an emergency. I don't go there for the quality of the food, quite frankly. Now, I know some people do. Some people love the Big Mac and all that. If I lived in California or where you live, Greg, now I would be really tempted to go to In-N-Out quite often, and I would have a real problem with that. But anyway, my point is, if you wanted to impress someone, maybe take a date someplace or celebrate a special occasion, with your spouse or something, that you probably would not take them to McDonald's, or even Chick-fil-A. You would want to go to a nice place, a place that has atmosphere, a place that has better food. They would take their time. They wouldn't rush you away from the table
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And so when the experience matters, when you want to have depth of something, um, and I would argue that software to our users should have that. If we want to really delight and please our users, we need to be thinking about more than just speed and getting it out. So I know a lot of I mentioned this in the context of our discussion here because a lot of times people see test automation as the panacea. for speed. They see it as, here's how I'm going to deliver software faster. And
Mhm.
in some ways they can, right? But as you mentioned at the very beginning, we're really striving for that, what was it? Accuracy and repeatability,
Yeah,
you said?
consistency and repeatability, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just about speed, necessarily, in doing that.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, before we end our discussion today, are there any other things that you have on your mind that you'd like to get out there to the YouTube verse?
Yeah.
I just made that term up. I don't know what it's actually called, but
I'm always a fan of just encouraging our community to look at the tools as tools. Look at it as they come. Try not to get too lost into this tool is going to make me better. You're going to make you better. Your diligence to take our craft of quality serious is gonna what's gonna make you better. Um, you don't need to be ignorant of tools, so you need to understand them, but you need to look at them as tools. I think it's important in our work of quality that we communicate around the word of risk. I even use risk in our risk assessment. Testing is just a tool in risk assessment. I even take it that far because even the word testing can become our fixation when we're really just trying to provide information to somebody who's got to make an important decision, whether it's good to go and what they know they should know before they press the button to say deploy. If we miss that, we've kind of missed the whole reason we've been put in place as quality engineers. So don't lose sight of that. Check out my YouTube channel if you don't mind, Randy. I'll plug it
yeah,
at
please.
craftoftesting.com. And I always am open to meeting people on LinkedIn. So if you want to talk more on this, I'm sure Randy's in the same boat. Reach out to us on LinkedIn because we always love engaging the community and pouring into our amazing quality community to help you become the very best that you can be.
Yeah, that's really true, Greg. And I'll just say it once again, thecraftoftesting.com is what you've kind of branded, and that's where people can find you as well as LinkedIn. That's awesome. I'm also going to mention a couple of things. I do have a course in test automation. You can find it at mysoftwaretesting.com. And also I created a course for at SQA on test automation. I wrote the syllabus. I created the e-learning, and it's very affordable. And you can take a test at the end for like $49. It's a micro credential. It's not issued by ISTQB, it's by AdSQA. But if you go out to adsqa.org, I'll have the link in the show notes here or in the description. You can find out more there. And speaking of all that housekeeping stuff, please feel free to subscribe. It really helps the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you like this. Give us some comments if you have any questions or any opinions one way or the other on what we've talked about. I would love to be able to hear those. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks again, Greg. It's always a joy to be talking with you, and I really appreciate your time and sharing with us
A
today.
pleasure. I enjoyed it as well, Randy. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, folks. Well, this is it for this episode. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye bye.